Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Engineering Our Future podcast. I am your host, Luis Duque, and this week I bring a conversation with Danielle Schroeder. She's an amazing bridge engineer. I've known her for 1 or 2 years now. We met at the Structures Congress a few years ago. We were both a scholarship recipient for the Congress, so I ended up going and meeting at the Structures Congress, and I have kept in touch since then through social media and all the efforts we do with ASCE and SEI. She's super involved in the Society of Women Engineering, and she has an amazing career. She's an absolute amazing advocate for women in STEM, and I'm very happy to have her in this podcast, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode with her. And as always, remember to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done already, and rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. It really helps get the word out there, and it really helps promote the podcast and get it in front of a lot more people. So thank you so much for coming back for this episode. Thank you so much for listening week after week. And I really hope you enjoyed the conversation with Danielle today. But before we start today's episode, I just want to tell you about PPI. PPI is one of the absolute best resources on the internet for the FE, PE, and SE exam if you are currently studying for those exams. I know personally, studying for the FE was a lot of work, and right now I'm getting into that stage where I need to start looking to study for the PE. So I'll be looking at the resources and everything they have in store. They were kindly enough to give the listeners of this show a 15% discount if you go to PPI2pass/Duque. That's PPI2pass/DUQUE. Take advantage of this code. If you are currently studying for the FE or the PE exam, they have tons and tons of resources, as well as a pass guarantee program. So you know their resources are really good, and they have a really good reputation among all the professional engineers. So again, go to PPI2pass/Duque to get 15% off their products. Welcome to the Engineering Our Future podcast, a podcast where I bring you relevant content from personal experience and guests to help young engineers, students, and international students succeed in their careers. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Engineering Our Future podcast. Today I have Dani. She's a bridge engineer, and I'll let her introduce herself. We already did a quick introduction before, but I want you to kind of explain in your words what do you do and some of the involvement with different organizations.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dani Schroeder, and my pronouns are she, her. I graduated in 2017 from Drexel University in Philadelphia, and I am 3 years out of school. I currently work as an associate bridge engineer at Pennoni, where I mainly focus on bridge reconstruction, retrofit, and some new design.
Yeah, and we know each other for a couple years now, maybe just over a year since the Structures Congress. Last year was when we first met. I can't even remember, but it's been great.
I think so.
It's been great to kind of connect and keep in touch after the Structures Congress. And yeah, I just wanted to talk to you about kind of different topics that I had in mind. I've been focusing a lot more on being more inclusive and more proactive in what I'm doing, and I think you are on the same boat, and I think you're going to be great at all the questions that I have for you. But just to start, I just noticed you have a SWE something on your background. Can you tell us a little bit about what the organization does and kind of your involvement with them?
Sure. So what's in my background is a certificate, or my award, I guess. 2017, so my senior year, I won the Outstanding Collegiate Member Award, which was given to one of 10, or given only to 10 members throughout the society each year. So I had an honor of earning that. But to rewind a little bit, SWE is Society of Women Engineers. It was an organization that was founded 70 years ago now, and its mission is to aspire, advance, and achieve, and it's focused on the advancement of women in engineering and technical sciences and technology.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I was looking back at my podcast statistics for the past month or so, and I think the stats that I saw weren't as good as I wanted them to be. Right now, 70% of my listeners are actually men, and I really want that to be a more even split. And I think that's what I've been trying to get more women into the podcast. And I think you are a very well representation with all you do. So with SWE, I know you are a governor for SWE, right?
A SWE senator.
SWE senator. That's right.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask you that's not something you hear a lot of young engineers or young people doing, and I just wanted to hear from you like what that entails and how did you get that position?
Sure. Okay. So, for those who are unaware, SWE's leadership has three, I'll call them branches. We have the board of directors, which is the head leadership of SWE that works with our CEO. And there's a number of directors. And on that board of directors, so there's also a specific collegiate representative or collegiate director that's on there, which I think is pretty cool that they make sure that there's a specific seat for a current collegiate on the board of directors. The second body is the board of trustees that works with the monetary side of the society and is in charge of the reserved fund, so all the funding part. And then the third part is the Senate, which is not as what the name sounds. Typically, the Senate that we're used to is a representative body of a organization. The Senate for the Society of Women Engineers is a strategic board that works on strategic initiatives throughout the year and then takes those recommendations and presents back to the board of directors. At least annually, sometimes more often than that, but that is the general idea of the Senate. The way that any society leader starts with being nominated is when the call for nominations goes out. So this started my SWE Senate journey in September of 2018. I had a mentor who guided me through the application. So the application was talking about the variety of society leadership positions that were available. So president-elect, bylaws committee, chair, like SWE Senate, Board of Trustees, Board of Directors, there's all these positions that are on there. And technically I also, because I was within 2 years of graduating, I also applied for collegiate director. So it was filling out this application of my competency statement. So SWE has a specific leadership competency model. And it goes into 6 competencies. So leadership ability, communication, business knowledge and management, development, and diversity and inclusion. So you have to write a competency statement saying how your current and past experiences can be related to these competencies. So thankfully I had a mentor because I was very new to writing about this. I had a mentor that guided me through it and went through multiple iterations of me writing my competency statement and how, you can tweak it a little bit to make it a little bit better. And of course there's a page restriction. So also helping, get it to the specific words so that it fit on that number of pages. After that, so you submit that application, you've checked the boxes of I want to be considered for president-elect, society, Senate, collegiate director. So the 3 that I ended up picking was senator, collegiate director, and bylaws committee chair. And I only bring that up because when we go into a future part about the interview, it comes up and is important. So going into October, they take everyone's application, and if you got through that application process, your name and the places or the positions that you applied for go out to the entire SWE membership and say, hey, these are the people that are applying for SWE Society leadership. We are looking for feedback on them. So this is sent to everyone. So if it's someone, hopefully I'm memorable of that kind of that in a good way. Hopefully I'm memorable in a good way, but like it could have been someone I met at a regional conference like 3 years ago that could give feedback or any of that. So I know I, of course, sent this to specific people to say, hey, I know I've worked with you recently. Can you add feedback? And this was also, you could send this to external people, to like people that I work with at Pennoni to fill out. After that is taken in, and all of this feedback goes to a specific committee on the society level, so the nominations committee. After that feedback is collected, you are then possibly given the next round. And what comes with the next round was an interview with the nominations committee. So it was a recorded video that had to do with the nominations committee. And the thing that they gave us beforehand, they gave us 2 questions. What do you think is the most challenging thing that the society is facing right now or facing in the future? And what do you propose to do about it? They said it much more betterly worded than that, but that's a huge undertaking to have as a question. So had to think about that. At least I had those prepared questions, and then also there was other questions that they asked during the recorded interview. So that's October. Then fast forward to January, you get a call saying, hey, you've either been slated or not slated for a position. So I got that call, and that I was slated for senator. Sorry, forgot to mention it. When it came to the interview, there were specific questions that came with each position. So specifically with the one about bylaws, they were like, why? I think it was something of, what experience do you have with bylaws? And I was completely honest. I said I knew somewhat familiar with them in terms of my section currently, but beyond that, I really don't have much background in them. And I think being honest and being upfront about things like that, and not overselling that, oh yeah, no, I review bylaws in my free time, kind of thing like that, that sometimes that can be instinct to kind of go and do. But being honest and saying, it sounded like an interesting position, but I don't have that experience, I think is something that's that was very important to that interview, but also something to keep in mind for your career in general, of talking about the actual experiences that you have. So I digress. Going back to January. So January, I got a call saying, hey, this is what we have of the summary, talked about the entire nomination process, and said, congratulations, you've been slated as a senator. So you think that was the end of it in January. It is not. So just because you are slated for a position doesn't mean that you necessarily will get it. It then, I think a month after, it goes out to an election. So just because you're slated for a position, there are people that can do a write-in ballot, and technically, like, if you don't get enough votes, you're not voted in. So there is, even if you get all the way through this position, if you're slated by the nominations committee, you can still not get that vote. But thankfully, I still was voted in. And talking about, I think we were talking about this before, of that I'm one of the younger senators, but it's really talking about those competencies, so that the whole nomination process is about and centered around those leadership competencies. So it's how this organization has that value of diversity, and that I bring a diverse perspective to the Senate, that I could talk about my collegiate leadership, as I was involved with SWE since I was a freshman, and went through the various leadership roles. And in my senior year, I was president of the Drexel SWE section. So I had extensive experience, and brought a unique perspective of being a collegiate section leader, and then most recently a professional section leader as well.
Yeah, that's quite the process to get all of that. Wow. I think, I mean, the role that SWE has in the society right now, especially for other women engineers, it's huge. And I remember in college, I mean, pretty much every woman that I knew that were in my class, they were involved with SWE, which was great to see. I have a few stats here, and I think it reflects the need for such organizations and for everyone in general to understand kind of where this is coming from. So, for example, there is a stat that says the freshman intention to major in engineering, math, statistics, computer science, basically in STEM. In 2006, it was 18.4 men and only 3.5 were women. And in 2014, men went up to 26.9 and women were up to 7.9, which is still super low. And I know there's still a lot of ground to cover and a lot of work that needs to be done. And if I keep looking at the stats here, it doesn't get any better. I mean, after graduation, there's a lot of dropout from women, even more than men, and I think that's somewhat related to families or different careers that they may want to pursue. Um, and I think we as a society need to do better empowering women to understand that no matter what they decide to do, and no matter like they don't need to feel pressure to be an engineer or feel pressure to stay at home or do something. And that's something I've been working with my wife a lot, because we've been growing a growing family. She's in STEM too. She has a math major in Spanish. So every time I tell her, like, it's your decision, don't feel pressure about being a teacher or pressure about pursuing a career in STEM or staying home. Like, either way, I'm gonna support what you decide, and we'll figure out what needs to be done to pay for rent or pay for utilities and everything. So the question I want to ask you is, from your perspective, what can like other men do to empower women and like show them that no matter what they decide to do, it should be their decision and not be pressured by society for not pursuing a career or pursuing a career in STEM. Like, it should be what they want to do and how men can be better at doing that.
That is an excellent question. I first want to address the statistics. Yes, it is going in the positive direction, but as the statistics show, it's more of a marathon than a sprint right now. So we are seeing that progress, but it's a lot slower than at least I would hope. But for what men can do to empower women in STEM, if we're talking about in the career side, it's just making sure that you promote an inclusive environment, whether you're in a boardroom and if right now we're virtual, but if you're virtually on a call and a woman in your group has an idea and it's kind of just glazed over, but 10 minutes later, a man in your group decides to have almost the exact same idea, if not the exact same idea, but something very similar, and it's not given credit to that original woman. You can be that advocate and you can speak up and say like, oh, well, Dani had a great idea. I'm so glad that you added to it. So bringing that and acknowledging it can go a long way. But also just to help with STEM outreach, as we were talking about I can talk about my story of I didn't know what engineering was until my junior year of high school. And that was really because I think my school counselor maybe had a poster somewhere of a local engineering camp that was happening. That was on a Saturday at a university. And I was like, oh, math and science, engineering, okay, cool. I go to the camp. I absolutely loved all the labs that I did there. But if it wasn't for seeing that flyer or going there, I don't know if I really would have ended up in engineering. So going back to the outreach part of it, of as a man in engineering and trying to promote more women into the field, of working on outreach, talking to kids as young as kindergarten, of just saying how much you love the field that you're in. As we were talking about, it's not saying you need to be an engineer, you need to go into STEM, just showing them how rewarding a career in STEM can be. And passion is contagious, and if you love what you're doing, like, that'll show to the kids. And I know through my STEM outreach, like, I've heard some amazing questions from kids of we were doing a activity that's about skyscrapers, so slender towers. And the one question I was asking the kids was, okay, here's some pictures of some skyscrapers. What do they all have in common? And I was really just trying to get them to talk about the slenderness of that. It's a small footprint, but very tall, kind of talking about that. But one of the kids, and I want to say he was like first or second grade, was like, oh, all of these towers and skyscrapers, they have lights at the top of them because if airplanes get too close, they have lights on there to let them know that the skyscraper is there. And I'm like, I wasn't thinking about these questions when I was your age. Like, the kids blow me away with the questions that they have. So having those conversations and saying why you love engineering is really what you can be doing in terms of empowering young women to be getting into the field. The other thing that I try to say is also, if you're bringing a group of volunteers with you, try to bring as diverse of a volunteers as you can bring. I am a huge proponent of the quote of "you can't be what you can't see." Yes, you can talk as much as you want of how you love the field, but it's so much easier to see yourself in a field if you see someone that looks like you. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it's so much easier seeing that representation of someone in the field that's already rocking their career, and that, hey, maybe I'll follow in that person's footsteps.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And I've been following a lot of other women engineer right now, like in Instagram and everything, and just seeing all their like all the work they're putting into showing what they're doing and showing, yeah, kind of showing that example. And I think that's also one of the reasons I started this podcast, just to record my journey as a young engineer and talk to people like you that are super involved. And otherwise, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for the podcast. But also to show that it doesn't really matter where you come from. I come from Colombia. I'm a Latino. I'm definitely a minority here in the U.S. I'm an immigrant. So all these stats are against my odds. But at the same time, I work hard. I pursue my passion. And at the end of the day, that's gonna matter more than where I come from. And I think it's the same example. Again, I'm not a woman, so I don't understand the exact comparison. But like a Latino, there's a lot of people that drop out after college. There's a lot of statistics that are really sad, same as women, that they don't make it to college, or for different family circumstances, they are not able to go to college. And I talked to, I think you know him, Fernando. He's really involved with this set of Hispanic professional engineers, and we kind of talked, and it was kind of sad to hear all the struggles that these communities have and these people have, that I decided it was time for me to give back on that sector of engineering and become more involved with them. So just seeing all the work you're doing, it's amazing. And all the work that many other women engineers are doing is great too. And we need more of that. We need more examples, so young girls and other young people know that they're not the first ones like paving the path to success. Like there are other people that they can follow, there are other people that they can learn from. So I think that's a wonderful thing you're doing, and I'm very glad we met when we met, and kind of be following each other since then. Another question I had is, I know you're involved with definitely SWE and SEI and ASCE. How have these skills that you learn from those organizations translated into like the professional field? Because a lot of people think that you're volunteering, you're wasting your time volunteering. How do those skills have made you a better engineer at the office?
So, as I mentioned before, I've been involved in SWE since my freshman year, but I've also been involved with ASCE since my freshman year at college. And being involved in organizations like SWE and ASCE while you're in college are fantastic for building your leadership skills. It helps with learning how to manage people. I know particularly when I was Drexel SWE president, I was managing a team of 20 officers, and each officer typically, like, our structure was each officer, I think we had 7 directors of 7 committees, and each director had at least 1 or 2 chairs. So a huge board working on lots of different committees, working on lots of different events. So working on those leadership skills and how you're managing people can directly help you for getting to understand your leadership style. So I'm not a project manager yet, but soon, hopefully, I will be a project manager. So having these times to work on those leadership skills in more of a low risk situation has definitely helped me to work on those skills and figure out how I can be a better leader since, my time as president then. Another thing that really comes out of that is the communication skills, as I was talking about, of learning how to effectively communicate with 20 officers, or in ASCE, we had maybe 10 officers, but still having those effective communications of, okay, when is it needed to have a call rather than send an email? And that's directly transferred to what I do at work, and realizing, okay, start writing an email and how much I'm putting into this email. Like, no, take a step back. This needs to be a call. So having those kind of situations in the past have helped me with my current position. But one of the things that I've personally loved about my leadership opportunities in college that have helped me to be a better engineer is the public speaking skills. As a leader in a collegiate organization, or even a professional organization now, you get to work on your public speaking skills. And that's very important in our field of being able to communicate what you're doing on a project to both fellow engineers, to clients that may not be engineers, to the public. So having those public speaking skills and being able to take what you're talking about, pare it down and translate it, having those experiences is super helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen that, again, with other guys I've been involved with, and just participating in different committees and everything. I think there's a lot of skills that translate into becoming a better engineer. Would you say, from your perspective, are you an introvert or an extrovert, and how other people perceive you when they meet you the first time?
So I am an introvert by nature, but I think when most people have met me, they generally think that I'm an extrovert, because I've learned to step into being an extrovert or having those public speaking. Because of those public speaking opportunities, I've learned to be better at that public speaking and kind of come off as an extrovert when I need to. But it's really that if I need to step into this role, I have learned to do it. I like to equivocate it. So I love theater. So I always like to go back to the analogy of, like, I would 100% much rather be the stage manager behind the scenes, being stage crew, putting together the play. But I know if I need to be that lead actor in the play, I can step up and do that if I need to. But I am much more comfortable behind the stage, putting the things together, making sure the set is out when it needs to be, and working on that.
Yeah, I definitely thought you were a extrovert for sure when I first met you at Destruction Congress. Yeah, for sure I thought you were an extrovert, but yeah, just getting to know you and just hearing what you have to say just on different social posts and everything, definitely an introvert. And I think that's a lot of people don't realize that, like, being an introvert doesn't really mean you're stuck in your office and being quiet and just not do anything. Like, I'm definitely an introvert too, and you just learn to step out of your comfort zone and do all these different things that are commonly seen as extrovert kind of activities, but at the same time, introverts can do it too. It's just a little harder. And I'm actually reading a book right now. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called Quiet by Susan Cain, and it talks about the scientific differences between introverted people and extroverted people. And the main difference is the amount of, how she put it so well, is the amount of escaping my mind, the amount of reactivity you have to different activities. So for example, an introverted standing in front of 20,000 people is gonna feel a lot more that energy than an extroverted will. Even though it's the same amount of energy coming into kind of the person, the amount of the threshold of kind of energy that you perceive is different. And that's kind of what makes an introverted and extroverted. And she goes into all the science and how the brain works and everything. So if you get a chance, that's a really awesome book to read, and a really eye-opening book to read if you're introverted. And if you're an extrovert, that's definitely an eye-opening book if you know any introverts kind of in your work and everything.
I have not read that book, so I would definitely add to it. But yes, of talking about introverts and extroverts, like, I see it as like a gas tank. So I can do things like Structures Congress and meeting all these new people, or just this last year, it's almost been a year now, when I attended ASCE's YMLS, so Younger Member Leadership Forum. which is awesome, meeting young professionals from across the country at this event. But we'd have really long days where we're working in groups, we're presenting, we're doing all of this. That I can do that, it's great. But like my gas tank got very empty at the end of the day. So when we went back to the hotel, like some people are like immediately like, oh, let's go hang out by the pool. Let's go like chat and stuff. And I'm like, I will see you guys in like maybe 2 hours or so. Like I need a little bit of time to myself just to sit and relax, maybe listen to some music, and then I'm ready to go network and such. So I think that comes into it of having like that gas tank where some people feed off of that energy and they get not thermodynamics or any of this, but like their gas tank is overfilled by the conversations and stuff at YMLS, where mine kind of empties as that conversation goes on.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is it's all in our genes. Like as soon as we're born, like he was doing some tests with like 4-month-old babies by showing them, let's say, a clown or showing them something like really shocking, and the babies that didn't react were extroverted because they didn't really react too much, and the babies that started crying and going crazy ended up being introverted because there were the amount of kind of reaction they were getting was higher than they could receive. And I think the gas tank theory is a lot. It's probably better than what I was explaining before, but yeah, it's kind of, we as introverts they have smaller tanks, and extroverts they just have bigger tanks that can receive a lot more of that kind of excitation of being in groups and chatting and everything. And yeah, it was something that I didn't realize until I started reading that book, and now everything just makes a lot more sense, which is good to know, and good to kind of explain how the brain of an introverted works compared to the brain of an extroverted. So yeah, it's an awesome book. If you get a chance, for sure, give it a read. So we're run out of time. I want to ask you a couple more questions. One of them is, what advice do you have for like up and coming young woman engineer that is maybe starting college or maybe even in high school who wants to pursue a career in STEM?
The best career advice I can ever give is don't be afraid to ever take a risk. Sometimes you'll fail. Sometimes things won't go perfectly. Sometimes you won't get that internship or any of that. But as the famous hockey player Wayne Gretzky, or as some people may know from The Office, Michael Scott has quoted, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So if you don't submit that application, if I didn't put in a nomination for SWE Senate, who knows what would have happened? But I did, and it went through, and the amount of things that I've been able to do just because of, well, why don't I try? Why don't I submit an application? On that note, if I didn't submit for the scholarship for young professionals to attend Structures Congress, we may not have been having this conversation, because if I didn't submit that, I wouldn't have gotten a scholarship, and we may have not met, because that's how I attended Structures Congress in 2019. Additional piece of advice, especially for women or any underrepresented minority going into a field, especially in STEM, is to find your squad. So finding your community at your college of people that are like-minded like you. I found that community in SWE, but you may find it in an organization or even just through maybe your Frisbee team. Like maybe you want to do ultimate Frisbee, or maybe through tennis. Like you found that community that engineering can be hard. Engineering classes can be hard, but having that community that you can go back to, that when you're feeling very disheartened, having that community that will build you back up. And if you failed an exam or just didn't do too good on something, like having that community that like, it's okay, you'll do better next time. Like it's just one exam. It's just having that community that will build you back up. And then one last thing. It's more civil engineering specific, because there's so many disciplines within the civil engineering field. I highly recommend finding internships or co-ops during your time at college, because it's great to learn something in the classroom, but it's so much different when you are at an internship and getting that real world experience and taking what you're learning in that classroom to the actual world and finding out what you like and what you don't like. Because that's how I ended up becoming a structural engineer, because I really like the structure side of the internships that I did.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And I think that's what we've been kind of touching throughout the episode. Just find people that you can relate to and finding kind of those mentors. It doesn't really to be an official mentor. You can find someone that you can relate on social media or at work or something, and just see what they're doing and see that it's possible to be successful in engineering as a woman, as a Latino, as in all of these minorities. There are great examples that we can follow and always kind of pursue as young engineers. One thing.
Wait, I want to add to that. That is a really great piece of advice, because everyone talks about these mentorship programs, and mentorship programs are great. But finding people on social media that maybe you wouldn't have a chance to meet in person, like following them can still lead to that mentorship relationship. So don't be afraid to, like, anyone that's following either of us, I know you'll agree with this, of like, feel free to reach out, ask us questions, why we chose structural engineering, what advice we have. Like, we're more than welcome to answer those questions. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask those questions to someone you see on social media.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I always like when people reach out and ask questions. And I have a few people, and I think that's kind of one of the reasons I started this podcast, because a lot of when we were topic moderators together for the ASCE forum, there are a lot of international students reaching out to me saying, how can I be an engineer in the US? I have a degree in such and such. I want to move to the US. What do I need to do? And again, I reply to the questions and kind of build that mentorship, unofficial mentorship relationship, that hopefully I gave them good advice and they decide to move to the US. But just by reaching out and asking questions and just following people on social media, and just, it's great to be doing all of these, and it's great to see that some people are taking something out of it. One of the things I didn't know about you was that you play tennis too. I was looking forward to Structures Congress this year, and I was going to bring my racket so we could play tennis together.
Sounds like we have to do that in 2021. But yes,
Right.
So I played, okay. There we go. That photo right there is from high school tennis. So when we had our senior send-off, I think was what it was called, for our tennis players, they gave us each a photograph, like they took photos of the team and such. And my best friend to this day, I met her through tennis. So it's really cool to have those relationships through tennis and such. Yeah, I've played tennis since high school. My dad played tennis much better than I did when he was in high school, so he was the one that taught me how to play tennis. My fiance plays tennis, and my fiance's mom still plays tennis. So there's lots of tennis in the family, which is really cool. And I think you've touched upon this in a previous episode, but especially with tennis, but any sport, of that constant learning and constant training. You can't just pick up a racket and be, the next Serena Williams. You have to do all of this training. It takes determination. It takes routine of going through that. So I appreciate that you talked about that before.
Yeah, I've been playing tennis since I was 8. I still didn't make it to being a professional tennis player. I did play in college, which was a great experience, but I was definitely not going to be a tennis player. So that's why I kind of put it aside and decided to pursue engineering. But yeah, a lot of these skills kind of translate really well to engineering. So playing sports is definitely something I really enjoyed, and was the number one reason I ended up in the US. So yeah, that was great. So I've been asking the people I talked to here on the podcast, if there was one thing you could change from your past, what would it be?
Such a good question. When I think back to my collegiate experience, there's two things that I think about. One of which is I really wish I took the opportunity to study abroad or co-op abroad. I did an accelerated degree. So I got both my bachelor's and master's within 5 years, which meant that I was doing 18 to 20 credits per quarter, which was a lot. But I do have colleagues that I graduated with that did incorporate a study abroad or a co-op abroad during their time. So I could have done it. It was just that extra step that I never actually did. But I really think that would have been something helpful, because it would have given me a little bit more of a different perspective, and maybe would have been the co-op that would have been my full-time job. But I'm very happy where I am right now. But I think if I could go back in time and do something different, it would definitely be that. Another thing would be, I wish I didn't stress as much as I did about grades. Looking back at my time, grades can still be important for applications and such. But the most important part is what you learn from those classes. I know sometimes that sounds very trite, that you hear it all the time, but it's really, that's the importance. It's not about the grade that you got. It's what you learn 3 years out of school, that what you learned from that class, that's the important part.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and on a similar note, it doesn't really even matter too much where to go to school. I went to school at South Dakota State University. Like, over 90% of the people that are listening to this have no idea where South Dakota State University is. And I'm still working as a bridge engineer. I still have a full-time job. I'm still involved in all these organizations. I'm still getting a lot of great opportunities. And that just shows that no matter where you go to school or what your grades are, when you become or you graduate, when you become an engineer, there are a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities that you can still do after you graduate, despite maybe not getting a 4.0 or going to the best school as an engineer. So the very last question, how can we continue engineering our future?
Well, I think you're doing a fantastic job by having this podcast and having these conversations so that we can, engineer our future. I always revert to outreach because I absolutely love outreach, but our future for the engineering field specifically is our current children, our kids that are in as young as kindergarten. So what you can do to engineer your future is to volunteer for a STEM outreach event in your local area, because maybe that one day that you visit their classroom or attend a virtual meeting, that could be the start of a future engineer or a future person that goes into STEM. So STEM outreach.
Yeah, such an important role that gets overlooked a lot, especially with teachers or even as young engineers reaching out to even younger children that may become the future of our profession. So thank you so much for being here, Dani. It's always great to talk to you and seeing you all over social media and all over ASCE and SCI, and continue doing all the great things you're doing. For people that want to reach out to you, what's the best way and the best either platform or email to reach out to you?
Sure. So I am on Instagram and Twitter as Dani the Engineer. And then, Luis, I'll send you my LinkedIn if you want to put that in the show notes so that people can get direct to that. But Dani the Engineer on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, we'll link those in the show notes below and the description below, so you can reach out to Dani. She's doing a lot of great things with outreach and with diversity and inclusion. She also just started a new Instagram page called Jedi. So I've been watching it closely and excited to see what content she has for that page in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So there you have it. That's the episode with Danielle. She is an amazing woman in engineering. She's an amazing advocate for other women in engineering. Is doing great work to promote the profession among women, among students, and even other engineers. She's such an inspiration. I'm happy to have brought her to the podcast to share her story and just share everything that she's doing, because she's really a great example of a great engineer who is actively promoting the profession, especially among women, where we need more of that attitude to share and promote other women engineering. So I'm happy to have her here on the show. I really hope you guys enjoyed the episode with her. Make sure you reach out to her with questions. If you have any, reach out to me, and we're always happy to get those questions answered and always happy to help you in your careers. Again, a special thank you to Chuck Winders for the music that you're listening today. He's getting ready to release an album in the coming months, so make sure you check it out. Thank you so much, Jack, for the music, and I hope you guys are enjoying the music and overall enjoying the podcast. Make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Rate and review the show. It really helps get the word out there. And thank you so much for listening today. I'll catch you on the next one, but for now, let's continue engineering our future.